Not all managers are alike. Some managers manage artists, some manage songwriters. Our next guest manages record producers, an entirely separate and distinct world. You don't want to miss it. Stay tuned. This episode of the MUBUTV Insider video series is brought to you by the Music Business Registry. The Music Business Registry is the leading music industry publisher of the most up-to-date contact information for major and independent record label A&R, music publishers, artist managers, music attorneys, music supervisors, and much, much more. The Music Business Registry is the trusted industry standard and source serving the music business community for over 30 years with the most accurate and up-to-date contact information available. Their titles include the A&R Registry, the Film and Television Music Guide, the Music Publisher Registry, and the Music Attorney Registry. All of their publications are available in PDF, CSV, or online subscription. Visit musicregistry.com and use coupon code MUBUTV10 at checkout. That's musicregistry.com, coupon code MUBUTV10. When you're ready to put your music to work, musicregistry.com. Hi, we're coming to you live from the Sync Summit here in West Hollywood. And we managed to catch up with a good friend of mine, Jerimaya Grabher. He is the partner in GPS Management, which is a unique management company in that they manage record producers. So Jerimaya, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
It's good to see you, Ritch.
Talk to me about what is the role of a manager of a record producer? What exactly is your role in their career?
Well, the producer community is huge, right? If you've ever attended, say, the AES convention in New York or San Francisco or Los Angeles, or you go to NAMM, you'll see there are a lot of record makers out there and a lot of aspiring up-and-coming guys who work in their garages, who work out of smaller studios. But there's a strata, right? So that's sort of the bottom 90% of the community that is out there, and that sort of top 10% is sort of the world that I'm dealing in. And these guys are in-demand record producers who are being sought after by established acts, by record labels, and they are oftentimes in need of the same type of guidance as a recording artist would be, scheduling, business stuff, deal making, all the rest, because they're constantly juggling their schedules and constantly in the studio, hopefully, working, and so they need someone outside the studio taking care of their business and helping them, sort of plot the course for the year, or for, in the case of what we do, for the arc of what is hopefully a very long career.
Okay. Your company, GPS, do you handle just producers and engineers, or do you also handle songwriters? Or
we represent some songwriters. A lot of the clients that we have are all of those things. So, and I've been fairly deliberate about, over the last few years, making sure that any new clients that we decide to take on and represent are also songwriters. As the business has changed, it's important for a producer to have that skill set when they come into a project. A lot of times an artist or a band is in need of that role. And a writer-producer is someone who can, obviously be involved in the studio, in the creative process, and not have to bring in, say, a third-party songwriter, or, seek outside, assistance from a publisher or someone else to try and, make sure the songs are great. And a lot of times when you're in the studio, you're working sort of in this real-time way, and it's like, geez, this bridge could use an improvement, let's work on it together. And as a songwriter producer, you can have that impact right there at the moment in the studio. So we represent songwriters, we represent some recording artists, we represent a touring DJ who tours all over the world. So fairly diverse roster. Our clients, I think we're at 39 or 40 clients.
That's a lot of clients
right now. And they're all different. Not one of them is like any of the others. There's a little bit of overlap. Some of them are in, style-wise or genre-wise, maybe sort of in the same, kind of realm. But I really try hard to sort of A&R the roster, if that makes sense, and make sure that, we really have a lot of variety. And when someone calls saying, hey, I've got a project, I'm going to have a lot of, really good options, hopefully, to present them with.
That's an interesting point you bring up, because it makes me wonder, when somebody does call and they say, Jerimaya, we need a producer,
for this act, and let's say it's a new act, and they know your company and they know the variety you have, what qualities beyond just track record in that particular field, rock, pop, jazz, whatever it is, goes into the decision of you matching client with artist? What factors go into that decision or into that recommendation?
A lot of times a manager or an A&R person will already do their research, and they know potentially who they already want to sort of reach out to, right? But a lot of times, and I've been doing this long enough that I get a lot of requests for ideas. I'm representing this new act, or I've just signed this new band. What ideas do you have? Because A&R people and managers, they can't keep up with every single up and coming or established and very talented producer, engineer, mixer that exists out there. So I get requests for suggestions all the time, and so my first question is, let me hear some music. I'll go online, look at stuff that's existing. If they've got a YouTube channel, obviously you go to their own website, or if they've got music posted somewhere, you go check that stuff out. And I always ask to listen to new demos. What are the songs? What's the material that you're considering for this next record that we're talking about? And once I listen, I generally have a good sense of who could be a good fit, not only stylistically, but just sort of getting a sense of where an artist or a band is trying to go on this next record, and the type of client who maybe would be better positioned to help them get there. And as I've held A&R positions over the years, and so that definitely comes into play when I listen to this stuff, because I can listen and go like, I know which guy on this roster has the kind of skill set that would be a good fit for what these people are doing. And there are times when I don't have a good suggestion, and rather than be a, used car salesman, it's like, hey, I know you came here for a Chevy, but we don't have any Chevys. Let me try to get you into a Ford today. It's like, if I don't have a good suggestion, I'm not going to try to sell somebody a client or pitch a client to somebody just because. And I think that's, ultimately in the best interest of everyone. I don't want to ever come off as being too sort of desperate to try to find a client a gig. It's like if someone comes to me and says like, we've got this project, I'm like, I don't think I've got anybody that's going to be really good for this. I think that's maybe more appreciated than be like, well, let me pitch you somebody who's probably not the right fit, and then they have to figure that out anyway. So
it's interesting because a lot of what you've spoken about is the creative element, the music, and where somebody's going. And when you talk about the right fit, one of the things that comes to mind for me in relation to your job is how much of that, I guess, chemistry is involved in successful producer-artist relationships in the studio versus talent or skill.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's just like any other interpersonal relationship. You gotta figure these people are going to be in the studio together for weeks or months in certain cases.
Intimately working together.
Yeah, every
Close.
day, 9, 10, 12 hours a day, 5-6 days a week, and everybody's got to get along, So there's got to be a good, just general chemistry and vibe between people, and so that's always a key factor. It's like let's make sure there's some interest on my client's part and on the artist's part. Okay, we've established that. Let's get them together. Let's send them out and go have them, get lunch or coffee, or have an in-person Skype or iChat session if they're separated by, thousands of miles, to see if there's a real rapport between them. And it's tough because it's a bit of a blind date thing. It's almost like internet dating or something, where you're looking at someone's profile and be like, oh, he looks like a good fit. Look at all the things that are his great qualities.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. And you get in the studio with people and it's like, ooh, this is harder work than we might have thought at the beginning. But I am very serious about representing good people. People who are respectful and committed to what they're doing, and who have a personality type that is going to lend itself to getting more work in the future. And as man, this is a very small business, and if you develop a reputation as somebody who's really difficult to work with, that travels quickly, and people, hear about it and make a judgment call, and you probably won't even be, hearing from people as a result of that.
You're
They'll
not
just cross you off their list.
Yeah, not considered.
So
It's the life's too short kind of thing. And it's funny because, I guess producers, like artists, have personalities too. Some are much stronger, some have different ways of working, some are more dictatorial, some are more, I was told that one of the great jobs of a producer, which is easier said than done, is to get an artist to perform to the maximum of their potential, to bring that out. And there's no one way to do that. There's a multitude of ways.
there are. And, there are guys who, maybe push a little harder, if you're trying to get that perfect vocal take and nope, do it again, and make them sing it 100 times until you get it just right. I remember being in the studio years ago with a producer who's had a lot of success over the decades. He's sort of like a legacy, producer, and he was in the studio while the guitarist was trying to get this part with a thermometer, and he was measuring the fluctuations in the air temperature, and was convinced that even 1 or 2 degrees made the difference between the tonality of what he was getting out of that guitar. I don't know if that's true. I certainly, in certain conditions, if you're playing a guitar out in the, sort of humid air, it's going to change the effect of your instruments because it's wood and all that. But I think that was done more for the psychology of it, And then there are producers who are far more laid back, and they simply create the conditions for an artist to feel completely comfortable and relaxed, and therefore empowered to let go. And yeah, it's interesting. Each of the guys that I represent, they all come at this from a much different perspective. And there's no right way or best way to go about it. Everybody gets the results that they get in the way that they, go after it. And, at the end of it all, it's like, what emerges, I was going to say what ends up on tape, but, there aren't very many producers using tape anymore. But what ends up on tape is what matters the most.
Jerimaya, what in your mind makes a great producer? What are the qualities that make a great producer?
There's a lot of layers to that question, I think. On the one hand, you've got to be really, on top of taking care of the sort of the logistical stuff that goes into making a record, right? So schedule, the budget, if you're going to be working in different locations, all of the various logistics. If it's an artist who doesn't have a band, casting all those musicians and, arranging all that stuff and being mindful of, what it's all going to cost, right? And so, a great producer is someone who's going to take the responsibility and really care about those details, because frankly, if you're coming to me and you have $10,000 and you want to, do some recording, if I blow your budget, if I don't handle the money right, I'm not being a great producer in that way. That's only one part of it. I think the rest of it is, being the kind of creative collaborator that will allow an artist to evolve in their career or take that next step from album to album, because as a creative individual, everyone is trying to grow, everyone is trying to evolve. There's no artist that I've ever met that says, I want to make the exact same record as I did last time and have it sound exactly the same and maintain this sort of static continuum. It's like you want to grow and evolve, and a great producer is going to help you do that. Sometimes that means being pushed, nudged, guided. Sometimes it means, like I was saying before, a great producer just simply creating the conditions in the studio to allow an artist to achieve that on their own, and sort of getting out of the way. There's a number of different producers that I work with who are, they sort of, become sort of the fifth member of the band, and they are much more of a collaborator than a, sort of behind the glass. I stay here in the control room. All the the sort of the art happens on the other side of the glass. Sort of the breaking down that role and really getting into it with the guys in the studio or women in the studio. And a great producer is someone who's going to also look to challenge themselves, I think, and seek projects that help themselves, sort of evolve to a new place. Every producer in this city and frankly in this business is trying to get to that next level in their own career and achieve more success, whether that be, sort of critical success or a certain amount of, creative success or financial success, frankly. Everyone out there is trying to evolve and grow to that next place. And I think a great producer is going to look for opportunities that are going to allow them to do that. And sort of where I come in is to help them make those choices. We have these options. Which is the one that is going to be the right one that will get us to that next level? And then from there, we continue to make choices so that there's growth from project to project and year over year. And as you look back in time, you can see, wow, we've really achieved a lot. Starting out being an engineer that other record producers hire to now being an in-demand record producer and having people come to you with their projects, hoping that you will consider working with them. It's important for me as a manager to help them always be remembering that. Yes, you've got to pay your mortgage. Yes, you've got to, earn a living and support yourself or your family, but we've also got to be making the right choices so that you will continue to have choices in the future.
Right. Precisely.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm curious about from your end as a manager and somebody who deals with the business side of the clients' careers, do different record companies have different corporate cultures around the whole concept of making records? Is that really something that you find distinct between one company and another in terms of?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the difference between majors and indies exists, right? And within the major system, it's sort of shades of gray, you know, and you'll see different cultures exist within, say the Universal Music Group. You've got, labels in different parts of town here and different leadership, and I think a lot of that stuff boils down to who's running these companies and the kind of top-down leadership that exists and the way that the creative staff, and this is really the only side of it that I'm dealing with primarily, the creatives, the A&R departments, frankly, how those are staffed up and led and who's there. And there's, at the end of the day, these are all just individuals, they're all people, and where you find the differences are where you find the different styles with different people. And I've been doing this long enough that you see, the same people ending up at all these different companies, different label groups, different cities, in different roles, and whether they move jobs or not, they still bring that same approach to work and to A&R as they do whether they're working for Universal or working for the Warner Music Group or for Sony. And obviously the culture that exists with the indies it's just vastly different. They don't have as much resources, they don't have as much sort of corporate culture surrounding what they're doing, and it's typically far easier to get things done with them. And the expectations are different, and all the other things that go into being simply an independent company that doesn't have to answer to a corporate parent or shareholders or whatever.
One of the things you touched upon, which I want to sort of elaborate on before, was you said the clients that we take on now have to be songwriters as well as producers. And I'm curious, from the point of view of the industry and adapting to the musical climates that exist, how does that affect how you choose your producers? Because not everybody can fit into a box.
Yeah, not everybody has to be a songwriter. I think it's if you are a producer, I think it's a very important skill set to have. We've added some new clients to the roster over this past year, and they are mixers. I think there's been, in the first half of this year, we added 3 different mixer clients. Each of them very distinct from the others. But yeah, thinking about new producer clients, if you're a songwriter, that's important. And the way that the business has changed, has been, there's a lot less rock. Alternative is sort of waning. There's far more pop and rhythmic and sort of pop urban formats really dominating. This whole infusion of EDM into into music, and the way that record companies, as they've always done, start to sort of move in a certain direction. If something's really hot, you'll see signings, sort of move in those directions. And for me, it's about looking beyond all that stuff, because trends or these sort of waves that happen in the business, they don't last forever, and there will always be the need for people who produce albums. There will always be the need for people who write timeless classic songs, and chasing trends is, to me, short-sighted. There are other companies that do what we do out there that maybe are a bit more aggressive in this area. I tend to be more take a longer view of things and not chase trends so much.
So the personal relationship seems like it's very important.
Very important.
In terms of between you and your clients. Mm-hmm. And I would take it, because it's a people business and an intimate relationship between artist and producer creatively in the studio, working that closely for that long, that chemistry and trust really be essential. And those are kind of distinct elements beyond just the skill sets of what you're talking about, of being able to, produce, engineer a mix. Yeah. It's a whole different kind of thing.
Well, with a manager-client relationship, it's, again, there's a fiduciary responsibility on the financial side, on the legal side, and all of that. But there's also, there's a very interpersonal relationship that develops over time. And, I work for my clients, right? So, but I can't always be like a yes man. Oh, whatever you want, man. Yeah, yes. It's like, I have to say no at times. Like, no, that's not the right move to make. That's not the right choice to make. And here's why. And you can't do that effectively unless you have that strength and that sort of bond and that trust in the relationship between you.